Hi there, and welcome back to the first reading video of Mastering the SAT video course. I'm still Geraldine Cass, and I've got my notes in front of me. I hope you have your notes in front of you. You should turn in your notebook to the page that starts reading, and we're going to begin. So this video is going to be about common misconceptions that people have about reading. I'm going to talk about the structure of the reading section and how to work with it. And then I'm going to talk about really important tips that you absolutely need in order to get your best reading score. So let's begin. All right, the first misconception, and it's a popular one, is there's not enough time to finish the reading, or I read too slowly. All right, and usually what I find with my students is that 90% of the time it's not true, that you just think that you have to finish the whole thing. And the truth is you don't. Now, in front of me, I don't know if you can see this, but this is a conversion table. I just grabbed the one from Test 8 in the College Board. It doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm just choosing this to show you an example of different scores that you might want to get and how much you actually need to complete correctly in order to get those scores. So for example, I should say the reading section alone is out of 400. So let's say you're starting at a 250 and you want to get, I guess for your first level, you just want to get a 300. Okay, so I'm going down where it says reading test score and I'm looking for a 30. I don't know why they do this. You need to add a 0 onto every score. So I'm looking for a 30 and I see that, oh, I can get a 30 if I get 38 out of 52 questions right. Okay? Now, I want you to really get this. This is an important point because in school, a 38 out of 52, well, I don't know. I don't have my calculator here and I don't do math in my head. Is not a great score. I mean, you wouldn't be, that's not, certainly not an A in school, but it's going to get you the score that you want if you want a 300. That means you can get 14 questions wrong and, you know, pretty much be happy with your score. Now, each of the sections, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later, has 10 or 11 questions, which means you can forego an entire reading passage of 10 questions and still get 4 others wrong and still get the score that you want. So it's not typically that you read too slowly or there's not enough time. It's that you don't understand the scoring. Now, let's say you want a little bit higher score. Let's say you want a 350 and not just a 300. I consult my Oracle and it says, to get a 350, I need to get 46 questions out of 52. So it's considerably more difficult, or anyway, you have to get more questions right. I don't know if it's more difficult, but you have to get 46 questions out of the 52, which means you can only get 6 wrong, which means you, in that case, you do indeed need to get to every single one of the passages. But this is a good way, using this. It can be from any test, and there will be slight differences, but it's a good way to figure out how much work you actually need to do in the reading. The second misconception I want to cover is that there's more than one right answer. A lot of my students say, well, this test seems so subjective, like definitely A or B could be right. And here's what I tell them. I say, no, 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 that's not true. There is really only one right answer. You're just not looking at the details closely enough. Remember in the introductory video I said the difference between a right answer and a wrong answer could just be one word. So it's up to you. Let's say you have A and B left. It's up to you to ask yourself, what is wrong with one of these answers? And you're looking with a magnifying glass at every single word and saying, is that word right? Yeah, that checks out. Oh wait, what about this word? And you go back and you say, well, you know, that's not exactly right. And that's the level of detail with which you need to address these questions when you're choosing between two possible right answers. If you do that, you're going to get it right. Tip number 1, keep the pace. So this refers back to timing. Why people get stressed out in the reading section is because usually they end up spending too much time in a passage that's really hard. And there's always a passage that was written in the 1700s or the 1800s. The languaging is different, and it's just more difficult to understand what they're saying. Okay, and people tend to focus on what they don't understand and read it over and over and over and try to understand it. And that is the worst mistake. Okay, so right now I really want you to pay attention to this tip about keeping pace. Okay, so you don't want to get mired in one question or one paragraph, right? And the best way to do that is what I call yes, no, maybe. Okay, so the yes, no, maybe thing is a way to keep your tempo at a reasonable pace. So this is how it works. You read the question, you go to the passage where they tell you to go, you read around it, right? You kind of, let's say in this case you understand what it says, and then you come back and you look at the answers. And A looks pretty good, so we're going to call that a yes. All right. B, you say, oh no, B is ridiculous. It's not even about this. So you can cross off B on your page. It's a no. You look at C, and you're not quite sure. It seems like it's good, but I don't know. You just can't tell. Well, that's a definite maybe. We'll leave it in, move on. And D, nah, I don't like D, so we cross off D. Now we're left with A and C. A was a yes, C was a maybe. And you don't just pick A, you go back and you look at them. Now chances are pretty good that A is the answer if that was a definite yes for you. But maybe you didn't quite catch something in C that was really good, or maybe you didn't quite catch something in A that wasn't so good. So you reread it, you make sure there's nothing wrong with A. If you love A, you pick A. But my main point here in kind of going through this process is to show you that when you have a maybe, you don't stay with the maybe and try to make it a yes. You just call it a maybe, move on to the next answer. All right? Really, this is a huge strategy. It seems very simple, but most people don't do it. And so their timing is very uneven. This is going to even you right out. Okay. Now, the next one, I already sort of introduced this strategy in reading, but I'm going to get into it a little bit more. And that is, you want to read around where they tell you to go. So if there's a question that says, in lines 17 to 23, the author, blah, 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 you go to 17, and then you go early. You can maybe go one more sentence, or if it's sort of near the beginning of the paragraph, you can just start at the beginning of the paragraph and then read through till 23. If it's toward the end of the paragraph, you might start at 17 and read to the end of the paragraph. And again, I would say, if you're reading that bunch and there's parts of it that you don't understand, don't worry about it. Go with what you know. This is a huge point. Again, I mentioned it before, that people get mired in trying to understand one thing. It doesn't matter. You can get answers right with a less than perfect understanding. And when we get to, in the next video, specific questions, you're going to know exactly what I mean. So don't sweat it if you don't really understand. If you don't understand it, call it a maybe and move on. Okay. And then the third and final tip for this video is prove your answers. This is really important. You want to look for obvious proof. Now, I'll say not 100% of the time, but the vast, vast majority, maybe, I don't know, 85% of the time, the answers are right there on the surface. This is not school. In school, they ask you to dive deep and figure out the motivation and what's going on, right? No, no, no. SAT is not school at all. It's superficial. You barely lift the first layer of onion skin. Okay, so don't make it harder than it is. Look for something obvious. If you read in the passage and you're like, I don't know, I don't see it, read a little bit more. It's probably in the next sentence or maybe the previous sentence. Okay, and also, I guess the last part of that is don't do this by memory. This is an open book test. It's a gift. In school, you rarely have open book tests, but here, you get the material. It's right in front of you. So go back, look for the proof, read it, and do the best that you can with that. We've covered now this kind of introductory material for reading. Next video, we're going to start getting into the specific questions. So what you'll want to do is get test number 1 from the College Board out. You should have printed it out, but if you didn't use that test for your practice test to get your starting scores, then go ahead and print it out now. And you should print it out. Don't look at it online because I want to teach you how you should be writing on your test like you will on the day of the real SAT. So I will see you shortly.